Excellent. All right, Bruce. Welcome. I'm Councillor William Riley. I'll be the chair of tonight's meeting. This is just to note that this is, I believe it's meeting number 7, and today's date is, September 11th, 2023. I'm going to have to read here that prior to commencing the Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting, I'm going to mention that the following things are read into the record: that comments can be made from members of the public for a matter that is on the agenda, advising the chair during the request to address an item on the agenda section of the agenda. 2, the public may submit written comments for matters that are on the agenda to jpalov@westlincoln.ca before 4:30 p.m. on the day of the meeting, and comments submitted will be considered public record. This is my, first time chairing with our new deputy clerk, Justin. So for those of you who might not recognize him, we're very fortunate to have Justin here. So that's who Jay Palov is. And and so then going to number 3, the meeting is live stream. So if you're watching from home, you already know this, but we do mention that it also is being recorded and available on the township website, usually within 24 hours, sometimes 48. All right, so I'm going to move forward to the land acknowledgement statement. The township of West Lincoln, being a part of the Niagara region, is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendowack, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Township of West Lincoln, as part of the regional municipality of Niagara, stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. So at this point, I'm going to look around the horseshoe here to see if there's any pecuniary interest and/or conflict of interest. Not seeing or hearing any. We're going to move forward to our planning item. Our public meeting item, which is an application for a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by Henry and Lisa Van Ryn for the property municipally known as 8248 Concession 3 Road on behalf of the owners of Doug and Rita Lampman of 8214 Concession 3 Road. Both properties are located on the south side of the Concession 3 Road, southeast of the hamlet of Caister Center, west of Smithville Road, Regional Road 14, municipally known as 8214 and 8248 Concession 3 Road. And the file number, for those who are interested, is 1601-006-23. So, again, you're going to hear me repeat a little bit of this, but as we go forward. So, again, this is a public meeting to consider a zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Henry and Lisa Van Ryn for 8248 Concession 3 Road, file number 1601-006-23. I must state that the Planning Act requires on Section 3412 that before passing a zoning bylaw amendment, council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect of this amendment. The purpose of the public meeting is to receive comments and answer questions from the public regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. We stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed amendment, and any comments received will be taken into account by council in their consideration. I must also mention that under the Planning Act requires through Section 3413 that council advise the public that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of West Lincoln before the bylaw is passed, that person or public body is not entitled to appeal that decision of council for the Township of West Lincoln to the OLT, which also stands for the Ontario Land Tribunal. So at this point, I will go to our deputy clerk to ask to please advise the method and dates by which notice of the public meeting was given.
Proper notice was given by way of email and mail circulation to agencies and neighboring properties on August 18th, 2023. Additionally, a notice sign was also placed on the property on August 17th, 2023.
Thank you. And so I'm going to go to our senior planner, Susan Smith, to explain the purpose and reason for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment.
Good evening, Chair, Committee, and Council, and those in the public gallery. I'm here to present the application for zoning amendment that was submitted by the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Van Ryn, owners of 8248 Concession 3 Road, on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Lampman, owners of 8214 Concession 3 Road. This application has been submitted to satisfy conditions of consent, a lot boundary adjustment, which was approved by the Committee of Adjustment on April 26, 2023, under Report COA 006-23, File B03-2023. 2023 WL. The approved boundary adjustment granted 0.43 hectares, or 99 acres, of agricultural designated land from 8214 Concession 3, which is referred as Parcel 3, the severed lands on the attachment number 2 as part of this report. And this land will be merged with 8248 Concession 3 Road, which is referred as Parcel 5, which is the benefiting land, also noted on attachment number 2. Following the boundary adjustment, 8214 Concession 3, which will be the retained lands, will be approximately 17 hectares, or 42.11 acres in size, which includes the dedication of 1.22 meter of a road widening. And 8248 Concession 3 Road will be approximately 1.367 hectares, or 3.38 acres in size, which also accounts for the road widening dedication. As noted, both parcels are located on the south side of Concession 3 Road, east of Castler Center Road, and west of Smithville Road, Regional Road 14. 8214 Concession 3 is a larger agricultural parcel. It contains a single detached dwelling, 2 accessory structures. The parcel also contains environmental features, including wetlands and woodlands. These are located in the rear portion of the site, although these features will not be impacted by this amendment application. The purpose of the zoning amendment for 8214 Concession 3 will address the deficient lot area and front yard setback, which under the agricultural zone, section 5.3 of the bylaw, where a minimum lot area is to be 40 hectares or 98.84 acres, and the minimum front yard setback is required to be 15 meters. The proposed site-specific amendment is to capture these deficiencies with a minimum lot area of 17 hectares and a minimum front yard setback of 6 meters, that being from the existing dwelling. The environmental protection and environmental conservation zones along the rear section of the parcel will be maintained. 8248 Concession 3 is a smaller agricultural parcel with a site-specific zoning reference, A-5. This permits the salvage yard operations with specific regulations recognizing a lot frontage, side and rear yard setbacks, lot area, lot coverage, and building height. The purpose of the zoning amendment for 8248 Concession 3 Road will continue to recognize the current A5 exemption and apply the same permission to allow for this salvage yard operation on the lands merging or to be merged from 8214 Concession 3, as well as applying a 30-meter vegetation protection zone, which will be measured from the wetland-woodland boundary at the rear and west portion of the lands added. It is approximately 1,073 square meters, or 0.1111 hectares in size. This area will be placed under Environmental Conservation Zone, which was recommended by the region. In terms of the policy framework, under the provincial policy statement, it states that lot adjustments may be permitted for legal and technical reason. In this circumstance, this application, where over a period of time, the salvage yard operation encroached onto 8214 Concession 3, and this amendment will correct and or update the existing situation for the entirety of the lands for such use as the salvage yard, so it's compliant. Considering no additional uses are being added and the areas zoned for environmental protection and conservation are being maintained, the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement for the long-term protection of agriculture uses and environmental sustainability. Similarly, the growth plan states that primary agricultural areas will be protected for the long term, minimizing and mitigating adverse impacts on the agricultural system. Historically, 8248 Concession 3 Road has been used for the salvage yard, and the operation does not plan to expand their capacity, and this amendment application is recognizing the use and is not expected to have any adverse impacts on the surrounding agricultural uses. With respect to 8214 Concession 3, the lands are being maintained as agricultural and agricultural-related uses, and the boundary adjustment and application to amend the bylaw will not impact the surrounding agricultural productions, as the lands being merged has not been actively farmed. As this is the case, the intent of the agricultural zone is being maintained and therefore supporting the protection of agricultural lands and conforms to the growth plan. This application was also weighted against the regional official plan policies for protecting the agricultural system, particularly lot adjustments for legal or technical reasons which do not result in the creation of new lot. Again, in this case, the boundary adjustment was the framework to legally correct the encroachment of the salvage yards onto the abutting lands. Additionally, policies pertaining to the long-term protection of natural heritage systems are being satisfied by refraining from any fragmentation of the features and continuing the environmental protection and conservation designation, including the 30-meter vegetation protection area to the wetlands and woodlands buffer. Therefore, the application also conforms to the regional official plan. The subject properties are both designated as good general agricultural and natural heritage system in the township's official plan. The purpose of the good general agricultural is to ensure that these are protected and preserved for agricultural purposes. Although the designation does also acknowledge a number of legally established non-agricultural related uses, buildings, and structures, and therefore are zoned accordingly. These uses can continue to exist legally, and any changes shall be in accordance with the applicable policies and may require further zoning amendments, site plan approvals, and any other approvals as required to continue and allow the legal established use. This relates to this amendment application for 8248 Concession 3 Road for the salvage yard operation. As previously noted, both properties do contain environmental features designated as part of the natural heritage system, and these are significant in the context of surrounding landscape given their size, location, quality, and ecological function. The main objective is to maintain, restore, and where possible, enhance the long-term health and integrity. Since the boundary adjustment and the amendment application will not impact these features and no site alteration or new construction is being proposed, the application follows the intended objectives and conforms to the township's official plan. Please note that at the time of writing this report and up to this evening, there has been no public comments received. Noted in the report, there were no concerns raised by the public or Public Works Department. The Region of Niagara did provide comments, and they did indicate the recommendation of the 30-meter vegetation protection zone, that it be applied to those lands being merged for the purposes of the salvage yard, approximately the 0.11 hectares, and continue to be zoned as environmental conservation. The region also did note that any future planning applications, such as site plan control, may trigger the requirement for an archaeological assessment, since these properties are within the region's mapped area for archaeological potential. Staff do not believe that there is any financial impact, since the recommendation for approval is within the mandated 90-day timeframe from the date of this application being deemed complete, which was on August 18th, 2023. Therefore, in conclusion, planning staff asks that committee and council receive the recommendation report for consideration, as well as that the application for zoning bylaw amendment be approved in accordance with the accompanying zoning bylaw and the site-specific regulations, and that no further public meeting is required for consideration of this bylaw in accordance with Section 3417 of the Planning Act. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I'll also ask if the applicant or their authorized agent is present and willing or interested in speaking. You're not interested in speaking? Okay, that's fine, but just if this would be your chance if you did. Okay, so at this point, I'll go to the public submissions. So are there any oral or written submissions from anyone present in this meeting, either in person or by Zoom, regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? I do need to state that I would like to stress that this may be the only public meeting held with respect to this application. Therefore, if any members of the public that are in attendance at this meeting would like to make their comments and or provide written comments, they should do so now. And I'll start with the virtual, but if you're attending virtually and would like to make the comments, you can do so by one or two options. If you're using a computer or smartphone, you're gonna just raise your hand to that feature there, and if you're called in, which I haven't seen yet, but if you called in, you're gonna hit *9, and that will notify us that you'd like to speak to this. Once you've been acknowledged to speak, please unmute your microphone. It is important that you provide the comments now. If you're not done so in writing or verbally as LLT, may not consider comments made during any other council and or committee meeting. Also, anyone wishing to speak are required to unmute the microphone to talk, but then when you finish, we do ask that you remute your microphone. And prior to speaking, I will ask for your name and address for the record. So right now, I'll go to our IT department just to start virtually, see if there's any hands up virtually that would like to speak to this. Again, not seeing anything just yet. So that's good. So anyone presently in the meeting, physically here, would like to speak to this? Any comments? No? All right. So now I'll go to members of committee here. I'll just mention that. Do any members of the committee have any oral written submissions on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? I do need to note that members of the committee must make their comments now. As heard before, as the OLT may not consider comments made at any other council and or committee meeting, any members wishing to speak are required to mute their microphone to talk, and then I'm going to tell you to mute your microphone again when you're done. So
No.
I have Councillor Trombetta.
It's not on this, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to say you introduced Justin. I've never met Mrs. Smith.
Oh.
And you're new to presenting tonight, at least to me. I don't know about the rest of council, but, thank you. I'd like to at least get some formal introduction on her, if
Perfect.
that's possible, by Mr. Director. If
But you have
possible.
no questions or
No,
comments?
no, I just wanted to say
Okay,
thank
no
you. You
worries.
introduced him, so it's the
Yeah,
first time
no
for
worries.
Mrs. Smith for me, so just wanted to put that.
Perfect.
So,
It's
Smythe.
Smythe. I said
Yeah.
Smith, but Smythe.
Oh,
it's.
it says Smith on,
Well,
it's
that's-
Smythe there? Sorry.
Yes.
Smythe, sorry. See, there you go. Didn't even get the name right. I'm not sure.
My apologies as well. You're so
So-
polite in not pointing that out earlier when I made
That's
a
okay.
mistake. Thank you. Any other members of committee? Okay, Mayor Ganan?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I actually do have a question. So we have dealt before, through you, Mr. Chair, to our director, with protected land, conservation areas put aside, and have had some difficulty in terms of maintaining that. So the recommendation for a 30-meter environmental protection, environmental conservation area be continued through. Is that enforceable, or is that something that we can build into having random spot checks? Just something to ensure that we don't, in not 5 years, but maybe 10 years, 15 years, have a difficulty with somebody who's so encroaching upon those lands that are supposed to be protected.
So through you, Mr. Chair, the 30-meter is certainly something that can be defended because it is a recommended setback by experts at the region and the Conservation Authority, both in this instance. The catch is the setback is not for the whole of the business property. It's only for the additional 1 acre that's being added, and it's not visible from the road. So short of doing some on-site inspections through bylaw or something, you're not necessarily going to be able to see it just from a quick drive-by. And the other angle that Susan and I just spoke about is you could do it through site plan control, but again, the enforcement piece would require on-site inspection, I think.
Okay, so is that, again, through you, Mr. Chair, is that something that we need to be considering? As you know, I'm not concerned about this particular property. I'm concerned about precedent setting and the fact that we have had to deal with issues that were set in the past that have, come back, that we continue to deal with.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if we have a way of building in that kind of insurance. And if it's back in the bush, that's going to be even harder, obviously. So.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if you take a look at page 86 of the package for tonight, it's an air photograph that shows the additional 1 acre that's being added, and it's pretty clear from that map that the history is use right up to the edge of the woodlot. So this is now pulling back the use in an area that I believe, as I recall from an on-site inspection, is actually already gravelled. So it is going to be somewhat tough to regulate. We can rely on the owner and his word, or we can do random spot checks if that's the wish of council.
Okay, thank you.
I've got Councillor Chichek, then Councillor Broderick.
Thank you. Could we also rely on a hard stop by a fence that would be at the property line that would demarcate the actual zone property from, I know the 30-foot buffer is just to allow for the gradual successional woodlots, et cetera, but that would stop the woodlot from encroaching on the rezoned lands.
The fence, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, the fence might help stop the business from encroaching on the woodlot, but I think you said it backwards.
I think I did too, but it's okay. You got what I meant.
I got what you meant.
That's terrible. Now we're
It's-
not understanding each other.
It's certainly something we can discuss through the site plan control
I-
process, if that's a thought.
Mr. Chair, through you, on other sites where we've been concerned because there was issues of neighbors who were complaining, we asked for a fence that would cause the business a hard stop and was appropriate. If a further variance were to be asked for or a boundary change, that would mean you'd be going beyond the fence. So there was a berm, I believe, on one property that we even asked for a fence on top of the
Yes.
berm. So I'm just asking to solve the problem for the owners as well as anybody else in the future and furthering the mayor's question. I have one other question. So is that something we might look at, even if it was a chain link or a snow fence or something, that a demarcation point that was more substantial than just having an argument well after this meeting?
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly from our perspective, that is a possibility. I don't know if the owner would have any comment with respect to that thought, since he
Well,
is
you can
he
talk
is
about it
here.
and bring it back when the report comes back as a recommendation report?
Well,
This
so-
is.
This
Wait a minute.
is.
This is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Mr. Ben Ryan is here, though.
Yeah, would you like to come up and maybe speak to that? So I just as a formality, I do need to just state your name and address for the record, but after that, you can
Sorry, man.
explain.
I can take a seat? Perfect. I'm not used to this.
information report on the zoning bylaws.
So-
No, I know.
Henry Van Ryn, I am the property owner that is getting spoken of. I understand the fence, but there is a berm on the property, on the back, which separates very clearly, if you have the picture,
I
from
do.
the farmland going towards. So if I was to put a fence up, then therefore I have to put it on the other side of the berm, or I have to put it on the inside of the berm. So the berm's made out of concrete, it has bricks, it's got dirt, it's got very ugly vegetation on it. So that's exactly what it is.
Don't
But-
go any further. We need you to talk
Yeah.
about the fact that we now have a dump back there that was, it's okay. The problem, I guess, I'm having is that if a future council, or if there was a future severance or encroachment that wanted to be happening, this has been in an area that wasn't properly zoned for the use of it, and yet it's fully used. And now I won't even go into what the berm is made out of. But the issue is that if there was ever a want to move it back, it could be used fully before it was rezoned.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I was almost going to call you Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. Through you, Mr. Chair, the fact that we are talking site plan in this case, I'm just thinking as I'm sitting here that it's probably best to deal with this technical kind of issue through the site plan
That's fine.
process. And if that's the desire of council to have some demarcation, then we'll sort it out through the site plan.
Site plan, perfect.
I'm okay with that. And my second question, Mr. Chair,
Go
was the fact that there's an update, a comprehensive update in housekeeping manner to our zoning bylaw that actually, which is what triggered me, because it talks about a salvage yard. And I thought, is that what triggered that portion of the comprehensive housekeeping item, or was that just there anyway?
Mr. Chair, it came to our attention that our definition was out of date, and so it's been modified, but modified through housekeeping, so it applies to any of those type of zones in the township as opposed to just this one.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Treble, and I'm happy if it's dealt with through site plan. I just wanted to talk about the issue of demarcation points, which has caused us problems with conservation authorities and businesses. So I'm not trying to stop your business, believe me. I'm trying to stop you from having trouble in the future.
No problem.
So if you could
I'll
just
take it.
mute your microphone, Councilor.
I will.
And I got Councilor Bradrick.
Thank you very much. Through you, Chair, to the senior planner or director, whoever would like to take this question, and perhaps maybe the owner may be able to chime in. I did hear through some of this conversation that there was a site visit. What type of salvage are we talking about, and was that taken into consideration with the region in regards to the 30-meter barrier?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I was the one on site, so I guess I'll start. Susan can correct me. The on-site inspection was to get a sense of the size and scale of the gravelled area and its proximity to the bush, or I think it is a PSW, if I remember right. And from my observations, the entire site is probably in some sort of a contaminated state. But in terms of the buffer, it doesn't really matter what the former use is. The Conservation Authority is adamant that because there's a planning application, there's a trigger, and they want to impose the 30 meters. So there's no instruction that that area has to be cleaned. It just needs to be unused.
So through you, Chair, to the director, in your experience, is 30 meters a large setback that would be asked by the region or the Conservation Authority?
Through you, Mr. Chair, 30 is pretty standard. Without an environmental impact study, 30 is pretty much the starting point. And Mr. Van Ryn actually had an environmental consultant hired, but it was going to be costly enough that it was easier just to say, okay, I'll abide by the 30. And so that's where we're at, as opposed to trying to get a smaller number and spending thousands of dollars to get there. So I think it's pretty standard, and we'll have a discussion in confidential about a different file where a different number is landed on, but they also started at 30 in that instance as well, so.
Okay. Oh, you just turned your microphone on, so I don't know if you had it off. And, okay, so any other members of committee here? Not seeing or hearing any. So now I'll go forward. So please be advised that a combined technical and recommendation report is being considered by committee this evening. Please be advised that once the committee and/or council has made a decision with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment, and if approved by council, a notice of its passing will be circulated with an appeal period. If you wish to be notified of council's decision, please ensure that you email the township clerk, jdyson at westlincoln.ca, or even stick around this meeting. Anyone who is interested in observing council and/or committee discussions about a particular bylaw should not solely rely on mailed notices and thus miss the opportunity to attend an applicable meeting. It is suggested that you watch the township website for postings of agendas to review items that will be discussed at council and/or committee meetings. The agendas, I guess this is more for your information, for the agendas for meetings are posted on the township website after 4 p.m. And prior to the meeting. Additionally, meeting schedules are also noted on the township website for the public to view. If you wish to receive these notices by email, it is also suggested that you contact the township clerk to advise of this request, including your email, as well as your mailing address and phone number. So this public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is now concluded at the hour of 7:05 p.m. We'll move forward back to our regular meeting here. So for anybody who's there for that, you're welcome to stick around. It does come back up, I think it's item 10.1. But yeah, now we're going to move forward with tonight's agenda. So thank you, everyone. So I'm going to go around the horseshoe again here to see if there's any change in orders of items on the agenda. Not seeing anything, so now we have a couple appointments this evening. First one up, item, I guess, P59-23. Waiving of development fees for Legion Villa. There's a PowerPoint presentation by Nancy Neville and Gord. I'm going to apologize for saying your name wrong. Sazi. Oh, what do you have, Councillor?
I'm going to have to be excused from item 59-23.
Okay.
As I'm part of the Legion Villa.
Okay,
board.
so
I just listen.
okay, so the councillor is disclosing a conflict. And so at that point, you don't have to leave. You just will not be able to participate when it comes to the resolution. Okay, thank you. So at this point, Nancy and Gord, if you guys can make your way up, and yeah, welcome. Once the presentation is done, I will read the resolution, and we'll go from there.
Good evening. I'm Nancy Neville. I'm with the Legion Villa Project Development Team. And we recently presented at the Committee of Adjustment in regard to a minor variance. I think it was just in August we were here, and we thank you for your support then. We were granted that minor variance, and so we're able to move forward on our proposed development project. I just wanted to give a quick little background about Legion Villa for those who may not be familiar with us. And then Gord will carry on with our presentation, our slideshow. So Legion Villa has been in West Lincoln for over 30 years. We are a charitable, nonprofit organization offering affordable housing for 55 plus or seniors in our community. We have 2 buildings right now on our own property, just on Mill Street, and we house 30 seniors in one and 32 in the other building successfully. And our proposed plan is to build an additional apartment building in between those two current buildings. That's why we needed the minor adjustment, the minor variance. There's a severe shortage, as you all are aware, of affordable housing and as well senior affordable housing in Niagara. And so we're just trying to do our part to assist with that. There is nothing else offered in our area by way of affordable housing for seniors, and our wait list currently is around 12 years. So pretty difficult for people to find a place to live, an affordable place to live. I don't know. I think maybe Gord will carry on now and talk about our project a little bit and then answer any questions you might have for us.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Chair, I want to thank you for pronouncing my name right.
I did.
It's probably about 1 in 100 that happens, so thank you. Yeah, it's actually really exciting to be here representing Legion Villa. It's been about 4 years, I'd say, of project planning that's gotten us to this point where we're ready to start taking the next steps towards full funding applications and approvals through the city or through the township and fee waivers. That's why we're here. So, yeah, thank you for having us. Just following up on something Nancy touched on in terms of the housing crisis and the need for affordable seniors housing. I think everybody in the room understands that we're in a housing crisis right now, and West Lincoln's no different. Like Nancy said, the current wait list for Legion Villa is 12 years for a seniors unit. And just looking at Niagara Regional Housing's wait list data for West Lincoln, there are 704 households that are on the wait list through Niagara Region, and 378 of those are seniors households, so it's about 54%. So it's a pretty staggering number. And just some high-level information in general. This is from the region's core needs data study that was done in 2020. So that it's predicted that West Lincoln's population will rise between 2021 and 2041 from roughly 15,500 people up to 30,000 people. And it represents about 9% of the total growth rate in Niagara. So West Lincoln is actually just behind St. Catharines and Niagara Falls for the highest growth rate over the next 20 years. And the projected population growth rate for people 65 plus in West Lincoln is about 193%. So a lot of seniors that are going to be in housing need over the next few decades. Just one other point, the existing housing stock in West Lincoln, so the region's data shows there are about 6,500 households, and 90% of those are single homes or semi-detached homes. And I could be wrong since this data was released, but my understanding is there aren't any high-density buildings being 5 or more stories for purpose rental. And that's another reason why this is a really critical project that we're looking to move forward. So that's, as the slide shows, that's the question of why develop, because seniors housing is desperately needed everywhere, especially in West Lincoln. And our proposal that we've been working on and refining over the last few years is currently a 6-story, 52-unit building. As Nancy said, it's going to be located, or is proposed to be located, between Legion Villa's existing housing apartments, low-rise housing apartments. And the vision for it is really just safe, welcoming, well-constructed housing for seniors. Legion Villa would like to maintain and dedicate services for their tenants and possibly even for other community members outside of their buildings. And because it's a seniors building, accessibility, aging in place, those are going to be very important design features that we'd like to include in the project. And energy efficiency is really important, not just for this build, but all builds moving forward. It's critical for a nonprofit that's trying to maintain affordability levels as low as Legion Villa wants to reduce operating costs as best they can, and energy efficiency is a great way to do that. And it also translates to the tenants themselves, so that, any costs on utilities that are saved, that translates to maintaining the affordable rent levels. So kind of getting to the crux of our presentation here, why are we presenting to you? So nonprofit affordable housing projects, it's critical to have government support, all levels, federal, hopefully provincial. We have a feeling there might be some programs coming down soon, but regional and local municipal are just critical. And we've had a great partnership with the town's planning department, with Brian and his team. And we've had worked with some really good private consulting groups, Cortec being our main consulting group to date.
That's where Susan came from.
Yes.
But our ask is that if the town's willing to provide their support in financial means, one is that we're asking that the Planning Act consent and the lot boundary adjustment that we just completed through the Committee of Adjustment, if those fees might be waived in retrospect, I guess. I don't know how I would word that, but and then our ask too, and this is critical, is that if future planning fees on the project, so we'd be looking at zoning bylaw amendment, site plan application. Normally, I'd be asking for municipal and regional development charge waivers, but the Florida government has seemed to have taken care of that. But any support, financial support that can come from the township goes a long way in terms of the project work that needs to be done to get Legion Villa to the point of being able to go for full capital funding applications. Like I said, nonprofit, registered charity, and they've really limited capital funds to be able to move this project forward. Part of the reason why it's taken a few years to get us to where we are is because we've been working on just an absolute shoestring budget, mainly through seed funding from CMHC, and that's come in the way of a grant and a more substantial loan portion. And we've done a lot of project work, which I'll show you on the next slide, and it's a risk for a nonprofit or charity to take on loans for capital work without knowing whether the project's going to be feasible or not, without being able to proceed. But over the last few years, they've taken that risk and we've done the work, and we feel very confident that this project is appropriate and that it can move forward. So this just kind of summarizes where we've come over the last few years and the type of financial support that we've needed to get here. So as I mentioned, the previous 3 years, it's mainly been funded through CMHC grant and loan through their seed funding program. And to show the work activities that we've completed to date, feasibility and planning work. So over the next few years, we our goal is to get to site plan approval phase. So in order to do that, there are a few more consultant studies and reports that need to be done. And zoning bylaw amendment is a huge piece as well, getting approval from the township. And basically, the seed funding we have will get us through some of this, but it's running out. And if the town is willing to support us financially and free up some of the money that would be dedicated to planning fees, we can use that to complete some of these other work activities. And all of this is leading to site plan approval, and then when we're there, we'll be ready to move forward with full funding application. The end goal is, hopefully a program like Rapid Housing Initiative through the federal government will be available, and that's full grant funding, which that's the ideal target for this type of project. Nonprofit getting full grant funding means they can keep the high affordability levels that people on the wait list need. And with that funding in place, we'll also be looking at other funding sources. So there are some private foundations, there are incentive programs through Enbridge and other utilities companies. As I said before, hopefully the province brings some things out. So that's the way we're moving, and this is our plan to move forward with getting to construction. So again, thank you for your time, and if there are any questions, we're happy to take them.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, I'll just go around the horseshoe real quick, see if anybody has questions for the presenters before I put the resolution on the table. Mayor Ganan and then Councillor Chichek. Your hand was up first, so you can go first.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for your presentation, both of you. It was well. The need is there. We know the need is there. So I'm just going to start and ask because obviously I sit at the region as well, and so some planning has come through looking at some projects that are already approved. So I'm just going to ask Mr. Zalzi, are you officially involved as a member of regional planning staff in this application? Or are you doing this right now out of the goodness of your heart? Could you just tell us, please, where you are in this process?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I probably should have given a little preface there. So I work with the Region's Housing Services Division with their new development team, and my role was created mid-2019. Basically, housing services and Niagara Regional Housing, we knew that there were groups, nonprofits, charities in the area that wanted to build and just didn't necessarily have the capacity, the expertise to do it, or the time, or combination of. So my role is essentially a development consulting role and project manager role that's being offered to nonprofits. And we can either provide informal guidance and assistance, or we can be retained for formal PM and development consulting services. So Legion Villa is one of the groups that myself and our new development team are working with. So to answer your question, I'm not involved in the regional planning approval side of things, but I do work closely with the planning staff at the region. And I should have mentioned this as well. So we have had not even preliminary, we've gone through some pretty in-depth conversations with regional planners, the regional's environmental planning team, and the MPCA, and they provided basically full support. And I'll go back and just show the plan here. This kind of came up in the previous conversation. So the MPCA has provided the buffer along 20 Mile Creek, and that's really how we set the footprint for the building and went about going through the feasibility work and design work.
Okay.
So there's strong support from the region side and MPCA.
And I appreciate that information. Thank you.
Yep.
The reason I ask is because at the last public health and looking at the meeting, when we were looking at various projects coming forward, there are 3 or 4 or 5 in various cities that are already in the process of moving forward. And then there were a lot of others, none of which were anywhere in West Niagara, where, there was nothing said at all. And I know, just from being in town and from writing a letter of support years ago when Nancy asked, that this project was coming. So I guess what I really need clarified for my own well-being as well as the rest of council is where we fit in this, because there was a list of projects that are still appropriately waiting for funding and so on. So obviously there's a queue. And I guess my main question to you is, we're not in the queue, obviously, but how do we get there? Like, what do you see as being the next step, other than funding? I mean, because some of these projects are there without funding as well. And the descriptor under, essentially said, still waiting for approved funding, or still waiting to find funding. So this project isn't quite there yet either, and I don't know if you see, from your position, what that bridge would be to get us in the queue.
Sure. So there's a bit of, I don't know if it's misinformation, but the region in a lot of ways, so part of my job, I guess, I field a lot of calls from private developers, nonprofits, people that are reaching out to see what the region has to offer in terms of affordable housing incentives for development. And the region doesn't really have much. The planning side, they might have things to do with waivers and grants when it comes to planning fees, but in terms of grant and incentive to provide for development, there isn't much the region has when it comes to affordable housing. But what the region's able to do is act as a go-between and provide full support for when a group like Legion Villa is ready to go for full funding application, usually through CMHC or a federal program. So a few other projects I'm working on. I'm on a project in Port Colborne where we are a few years ahead, and we've actually broken ground. And we're going through the same steps on this project that we did with Port Cares. They were lucky enough to get funding through the Rapid Housing Initiative Round 3 that came out last year. There's a group in the Fort Erie that my team's working with as well, and we're probably about a year ahead of where Legion Villa's project is, and we're expecting site plan approval soon and going for full funding, and that's what I anticipate for Legion Villa. So when we can get the zoning zoning bylaw in place and then go for site plan application, then the region, our team is going to be fully behind going for full capital funding.
So again,
ahead,
just to continue, thank you, Mr. Chair. So do you have your committee, your group that you work with under the Housing Authority? Do you work through Public Health and Social Services as well? Do you work under the guise of Adrienne Jouglet? Because she's the person who was presenting, all of these projects. So are we even close to, being within her eyeballing, her viewing of what's going on in West Niagara?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Of course, so Housing Services, the division I work under, that's part of the Community Services umbrella, and Adrienne Jouglet is the Commissioner of Community Services.
Yeah.
And there's reporting to the different committees within Community Services and Housing Services that the projects that our new development team's working on, they're front and center. So the support is there as far as I know.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, good, thank you.
All right, Councillor Chichek, you still got a question? All right, floor is yours.
I guess one of them is just kind of a clarification for me, because I've been spending a lot of time, and I know the wait lists throughout Ontario are very long, because I've been trying to find one for someone close to our family. But your presentation says aging in place, but everything we've offered up until now is independent living. So it's aging in place, but maintaining the independent living. This isn't going into any assisted housing or assisted living or long-term care, is it?
Through your chair, no. It's fully independent living, yeah.
Okay.
Just the aging in place refers more to
Yeah.
the design allowing for, it's a bridge between standard and accessible, barrier-free elements. There will be full barrier-free and accessible units in the building, but yeah, the idea is just general universal design accessibility
So
throughout.
independent living.
But independent.
But staying with that, because the need for that is what I think your statistics were referring to. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, I wanted that clarification, because there's a lot of long-term care and assisted living needs out there as well.
No.
And I guess, thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Trouble, and this may be unfair, but remind me of what the province has already offered for not-for-profits and how the Development Charge Act and how the Development Charge collection has changed already.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure I can answer that on the spot here tonight. We did have a discussion today with our Economic Development Officer representative who is going back to the region to have some discussions, although Mr. Sazy. Close.
That's good.
Did make reference to sort of an understanding he had, so maybe he could even enlighten a little bit if that's possible.
Yeah.
Shortly, I guess what I was hoping for was that our treasurer was here, because where I'm leading to is, most often in a lower tier, and I will ask Mr. Sazy whether he's made the presentation to the region to try and get the support. Municipalities are oftentimes limited in what they can do as far as waiving, because then that opens the whole door to precedent setting. And there has been in my life great torture to municipalities to charge the charge and then provide for a grant, or between various levels of government try and get a grant that will offset the cost, because it's a flow-through. But it shortens the pot of monies available, and then we get in trouble with the province who's telling us, why don't you have the money to build that new whatever it is? So it's a very, and right now, Mr. Chairman, I'm preaching to the choir, but what I was reading is that we are in a bit of a conundrum because of all of the changes. And our development charges, our borrowings, and the amount of infrastructure we have to put in are all stretched to the capacity. And I want to make sure we use the right words so that we don't have everybody else coming looking for a waiving. And I'm not belittling the application. I'm very familiar with the needs. I understand them completely. But, and this leads to then, I guess, my question, Mr. Chair, that I should ask Board, is how has the region reacted to any kind of deferral, waiving, exchanging of monies or grants for the purposes of their development charges that are in place as of now? Because theirs are actually higher than ours.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is fresh in my mind because on my Port Colborne project, we just went through this process with the building department and confirmed the DC exemptions, and with the region as well. Mm-hmm. So under the province's Bill 23 that was just passed, it's been passed, but it's being rolled out in certain phases. The first phase that rolled out, without having the literature in front of me, I can't quote it word for word, but the idea is affordable projects that are being developed by nonprofit and charity groups are exempt from any municipal, so being local, municipal, or regional development charges.
Right.
Yeah. So, and there's a certain affordability threshold that you have to meet, and you have to be able to prove that your organization is a registered charity or nonprofit. But if you can meet those two measures, then it's just a waiver.
So that's my point, Mr. Chair, and I thought that was really a moot point on what it was, the ask for the development charges portion of this was something that was coming down as a result of Bill 23, as well as 197 or whatever the other one was. And clarification on those is coming because municipalities are struggling with, okay, so who's going to finally pay the bucks? But that aside, this is a great project, but if you're looking for fees, and that's really the main thrust of the ask, because development charges, I had understood that development charges would actually not apply to a project like this.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that was my understanding as well, but I thought I would just include the point in case the question came up about them down the road. It might have been good to just talk about it today.
I think that's premature in that the legislation that's in place says you don't pay. So I want to be really careful on what we're doing. I want to get as many of these things built as we can, as well as market price apartments, because there's people who are waiting for those as well. So I just was concerned that all of the information, all the statistics were earlier done, and perhaps that some of the information you had you weren't aware of the fact that development charges really weren't going to apply to this building, and that's what's in legislation today, and that's all we can work about. We can't work about futures and what's going to happen. We have to work with today's legislation. And believe me, I don't want to in any way belittle or any way besmirch the presentation that you've made. I just want to make sure that we're working with the legislation we can address today and how perhaps allowing you to pay fees or whatever and then giving you a grant might flow better than having a setting precedent that would be applicable to others that may not qualify normally. So I want to be careful. I want to be really careful because the project isn't yet coming forward, and I know there's no changes coming from the province. I think endorsing this project and having our support to review fees that are in place appropriately at the time that this project is underway is something that I really want these people to leave tonight with. But I do want to make sure that we are staying within the legislation that is in place today, Mr. Chair. And I have a couple other questions, but it's not worth asking.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. You might just want to turn your mic off there.
I might.
And then I have Mary Gannon again.
Yeah, but just very briefly, through you, Mr. Chair. The other thing that I think needs to be straightened out in terms of the board, and it might be whatever you deem this to be. Currently, it's my understanding that there are some subsidized units in each of the two buildings, and some that are at market value. Is that Nancy's nodding her head, is that correct?
That's true.
So then there might need to be thought given to whatever it is you're planning to build in the next phase before you actually label it, because that was one of the questions I had when I first saw it, when we had a pre-agenda meeting, was, well, what are they calling this? If this is all affordable housing, if that's what you're trying to do, and it's all market value but affordable, that means that some of those exemptions apply. I don't know what the legislation says about subsidized, and that's when I mentioned the social services part of it, and whether you'd spoken, Mr. Southey, to Commissioner Jukai, because she would have that answer in terms of what direction this group should be going. So I guess I'm back to my question, of course, about where we are in the queue. So I think before we get into the queue, you have to have a clear idea about what kind of housing you're trying to provide, and make that definition suit what it is that the government's looking to have built as soon as possible.
Yeah, do you want me to respond?
Yes.
Sure, yeah, through your chair. So a couple points to respond to that. The first is that under Legion Villa's letters patent and corporate bylaws, they're mandated to provide affordable housing. Basically, market rent is not really feasible for the majority of the units in this building. So when we first started planning on this, a lot of it is based around what funding program are we going to target. Now, a few years ago, when we started, CMHC's co-investment program was the affordable housing program to look at. It provided a certain amount of grant-to-loan ratio and low interest rates for long-term that would allow a group like Legion Villa to provide deep affordable rents and still operate with a bit of a surplus for capital reserves. As interest rates started going up and construction costs started going up, the co-investment program became less and less feasible, and it's almost at the point now where, and I've talked to CMHC reps who said they're going to have to rejig the whole co-investment program because it just doesn't work for nonprofits to build affordable units and maintain operating. So over the last few years, co-investment has started to shift that way, but then programs like Rapid Housing Initiative have come about. And the basis for the project to begin was, at minimum, 30% of the units were going to be affordable by definition, being 80% or less of CMHC's average market rent. And then the region can't commit until the year of occupancy, but the idea is to have subsidized units through the region's wait list as well, because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all of Legion Villa's wait list is from the region's larger wait list. That's right. Yeah. So we know what we want to build. We know that it is affordable by definition. It's just really targeting the appropriate funding program and meeting those criteria and guidelines. Now, if we can go for something a Rapid Housing Initiative where it's all grant, no loan, then every unit is going to be as deep affordable as you can get. So that's basically the average between what someone on OW or ODSP brings in monthly, and you're looking at, $580 a month for a one-bedroom and $700 and something for a two-bedroom. which is incredible if we can reach that, but it's all dependent on the funding program. So if it is a program where we have to look at some financing and some grant, then the rents aren't going to be that deep, but we are going to meet the affordability definition.
Which is always changing, unfortunately. But thank you for that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I don't think I got an answer, and maybe I didn't ask the question properly, has an ask been made to the region about the waiving or granting of equivalent to DCs and other charges that are applicable by the region? Have they gone through that yet, and have they said yes, no, or has an ask been made?
Yeah, through you, Chair. So we've had several conversations with the planning department and their grants and incentives team, and essentially what they told us was that they like to follow the lead of the local municipalities. So if so DCs, as long as Bill 23 is still in effect by the time we're going for building permit, the development charges are just not an issue. The region's already stated clearly that they can't charge them, as long as we meet the criteria, the affordability criteria. But then, yeah, they'll this is what I was told, they'll follow the lead of the municipality.
Let me be a little clearer, Mr. Chair. Has there been a formal application to the region, as the one we have here tonight, made to the region, who is the next level up, closer to the province and the Canadian government? I just want to know that ask, has it been made as this one tonight? Not from staff to staff. That's not, I don't want that one.
Yeah, no, through you, Chair, not yet. No, in our mind, it made sense to come to the township first. This is where the project is. We want to get the town support and then take it from there.
So, Mr. Chair, just let me reiterate. I am supportive of this kind of project always, always, and I want to see more of them here, even though we don't have transit at the moment, but there's all kinds of people that have issues on affordability of housing, and there, but by the grace of God, go many. But I do think that we need to pay attention to the legislation in place. I'll say it again, to the rules and the way that we are governed. We are required to govern because we are a child of the province, as I've been reminded many times. And so I want to make sure that if, other than development charges, which we can't charge if they meet the criteria, is got to happen, I think we really may be a little premature. And if this project had an opportunity to talk with the region and social services, we may find that there's an apex that we could all sign on to this project for. But I leave that to my colleagues to further the discussion and determine how we should handle this.
Okay. We will be bringing the resolution right after this. So again, this was just a chance to ask any questions right to the presenters. I guess the one question I have for you guys is, so the potential proposed 6-story, 52-unit infill being proposed here, what impact is that going to have on your 12-year list? So if that's 100% occupied, what does that do to that 12-year list for you? Like, does that even make a dent? I guess is more or less what I'm looking at, and if we can kind of get a visual of the significant impact that would actually make.
So, to you, Chair, just top of my head, quick calculation. So if we're looking at the Niagara region's total wait list, not even for West Lincoln, not even just Legion Villa, just I'm sure they're almost the same wait list because there isn't a lot of existing stock to help with the larger wait list. But so 378 households, you're looking at 52 units. It's a good chunk that you're going to be able to house. It doesn't. It all comes down to who's on the wait list and who in the chronological order.
Okay.
But just high level.
I'm just trying to look at like how long your wait list is. Like if you're saying, we actually have 54 people who are on it regularly. I realize after probably 2 years that people have already moved on and found other accommodations, or they're still lingering, or I guess staying with family longer if they can. I was just trying to understand how deep your actual. It's one thing to say 12 years. I was just looking for a number of like an approximate number of how many people are on that list.
It's really hard to put a number on it, I would say. But just knowing that the population growth is happening, the wait list for the area is never going to go down unless units get built, right?
And just so you realize, I'm not trying to minimize this in any capacity. I'm, if anything, trying to bring more of awareness to the public of
Sure.
like, even if 52 was a small number and an insignificant number, considering, let's say there's 2,000 people on this wait list, like that shows you the demand and the urgent need to have something like this to even take any pressure out of that wait list in any capacity. I was just trying to help paint a map of what that looks like in West Lincoln with the Legion Villa.
Without having the actual numbers in front of me, it's hard to say, person by person, or
Yeah.
person to person, how many, but, 52 units, even if, so 36 we're looking at as one unit, or one-bedroom units, but that can a lot of times be couples, seniors couples, so, you have potential for 80 to 100 people to be moving into this building, so it's significant, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, so what I'm gonna do you have a question for the presenters, or can I wait to the motion? For the presenters? So can I just bring the motion forward so we can do it kind of on the table? We still have a resolution to vote on, to deal with. So can I bring that forward, and then you can ask your question to the director? So at this point, I'll ask for a mover in a second, that the presentation made by Nancy and Gord regarding a request to waive the fees for the new development for the Legion Villa be received, and that correspondence, as outlined above, be referred to staff to present a recommendation report at a future Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting. So I got Councillor Chichek as mover, Councillor Bell as the seconder. And so now it's open for further questions or comments. Oh, right, sorry, my apologies. So who's gonna be my seconder? Councillor, or Mayor Ganan. Okay, so I'll go to Councillor Rayner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Treble. Mr. Treble, what's the ceiling height on apartments, buildings in West Lincoln at this time?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the zoning is in the midst of a housekeeping, but at the end of the process, we're talking 6 stories as the proposed height.
All right, the reason I asked was I thought the last one we did was 5, and then we had to go to 6 to put the HVAC units on the roof or something. Wasn't that correct on a proposal for a project that was coming up in one of the subdivisions?
I don't think depending on which one you're talking about, I don't think we actually ever made it to that point. I think a lot of that was gonna be under, site control or whatever, the next design stage. I think the suggestion of the 6 would be if they were putting in an elevator, then it helps with the affordability component. But I think we might be talking about two different things.
There's 2 examples we've dealt with recently. The Mr. Budd one was 6 stories plus the mechanical on top. The one that was on Forest Avenue in town back at the start of COVID was 5 stories plus the mechanical on top.
So Bud was actually 7 then?
More or less, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was 5 to 6 or 6 to 7, but I knew it was.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the mechanical doesn't count as part of the height.
No. Do you have a further question?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Okay. I guess, any other members not seeing any? My question for staff is, I kind of, backpacking off Councillor Chichek's concerns there, is I don't think we have a policy. If we do, I certainly am not aware of it. But should we be exploring some kind of policy that allows, instead of getting into the precedent of waiving fees and certain criteria here, could there be something that we actually craft that allows staff to kind of look through it before it comes to council, see if it meets that criteria, whether or not to waive those fees? So it's not a matter of just coming to council and asking for waiving fees, and then next thing you know, we have everybody with everything that, they're passionate about trying to get a fee waived, but more or less, I think, and I don't have it in front of me, but I think Grimsby had something a little bit differently for just grants in general, and I'm wondering if maybe we should explore something similar like that, just to make it cleaner and neater, and it's not a matter of being accused on the road that we're discriminating because we support these guys, but now we're going to support them. If we actually had a policy that was clear as day, what kind of met that threshold, especially something like affordable housing, certainly something we can assist with, but just kind of curious.
My thought off the top, and the CAO can add, but I would think this kind of discussion should come from senior management ultimately as a report back to council, including Treasury and all sorts of others at the table. So I don't think I have an answer for you, but certainly we'll take that into consideration as part of the review.
Okay, and so that will be part of the review that we're voting. Okay, perfect. So that can be brought into consideration there. I got Councillor Bradrick.
Thank you, Chair. So through you to the presenters, thank you very much, and I certainly can attest, all of us sitting up here, with the exception of 2 counselors, will be looking for affordable housing in the very near future. But one of my questions is, and that perhaps maybe can lend to the discussion at senior management level, is about any partnerships that were explored in the community with other not-for-profits that may eventually lean into whatever type of policy we do develop, and look at strengthening applications that there was perhaps, other partnerships that were explored. Yes, please.
Through you, Chair, in terms of partnerships with other nonprofits in the area, I don't know if we've gone down that road yet. So when it comes to the actual land feasibility, the Legion Branch 393 technically did own an easement running directly through the middle of the property, and they've agreed to donate, now that we have the land planning consent, they've agreed to donate the property, and that just has to be done through legal mechanisms, and that's going to allow for the development to proceed. So I guess that's one example of local support. There are other partnerships that we're looking at, but not with nonprofits necessarily. It's more through funding programs.
I think the purpose of my question was to get it out of my head and into the universe so that it can be possibly part of discussions at the senior management level when we're looking at criteria about possible waiving or absorbing some of the fees in the future that organizations are looking to, partner with other not-for-profits in other capacities in order to make it a more fulsome opportunity for our dollars that are here at the municipal level. So thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, so I think we might have finally made it here. So I'm not seeing any other questions, so I'm going to go to our deputy clerk to bring up the vote, and then you'll see on the screens here as the vote takes place. Sometimes it likes to play peekaboo with us. We're waiting on two of you. Oh. Councilors, Rayner, is it showing up on your side or no? Oh, okay. Maybe there's just a delay in the system here. Can you just let us know verbally because it's not working?
I would in favor.
Okay, so Councilor Dixon's. But it's not working. You're not surprised.
It's consistent.
I know. It is.
It's just amazing.
Well, some weeks are better than others. You supported it. Perfect. Thank you. So that carries. I will note for the record that Councillor Bell did not vote because of his conflict. So that carries 6-0. And thank you guys very much for your presentation, and everyone else. Thank you for hanging in there a little bit longer than normal, but we appreciate everything else. The report comes back at a future meeting.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Councilor Wright, can you stop for technical?
All right, so we're going to take a quick recess here. We'll be back in 2 seconds.
Has the same issue. We've several ways within the last 3 years to try and get rid of them, natural ways, unnatural ways, to try and get rid of them. It just really doesn't do an awful lot to prevent them from coming into our yards. So this year I went and I purchased
have you. And we live now?
Okay.
All right, so sorry again, tonight just seems to be the night everyone knows in town what West Lincoln Internet looks like, and we're no exception at council here. So hopefully we can make it through this next portion. I'm going to go back to Dora. If you can kind of take it again from the beginning, we do apologize for the issue. If you can maybe just take us back to your name, your address, and then you can go forward with your presentation.
For sure. My name is Dora Pavlidis. I live at 17 Manorwood Drive in Smithville. I'm a retired single mother of a 23-year-old daughter who just finished university, and I have my 91-year-old mother who suffers from dementia, both of which are living with me. I came from living in the city of Oakville. After 30 years of service to the city of Toronto, I came to live in Smithville because I wanted to live a quiet and clean life. Again, a little bit of the background. I moved here in the fall of 2020. As of the summer of 2021, we noticed that there was a huge issue with ticks in our backyard, in that my mother had several attached to her in several years, not just in the 1 year. I had them on my body, bringing them into the house. My dog had them, even though it was only in the backyard. We back onto Crown Land, which is a field, and past that, just over on the other side of it, is the 20 Mile Creek. And I believe they call it the wetland back there as well, because of all of the drainage that goes to the back. So as a result of that, I ended up doing a little bit of research, and I found that chickens were an amazing natural solution to ticks. So I went and I bought 3 chicks this year, and I had them actually in my house. Shortly after that, to my surprise, I found out that chickens were prohibited. I guess I should have looked into it prior to that, but I didn't think so because of all of the chickens in the farms in the area. I didn't think it was a prohibited thing. So after 6 weeks of having them, we had to give them away. What I did notice, though, at the time that I did have them for the 6 weeks was a difference in my mother's condition and her issues. She was way less angry. She was much happier. She got up, she tended to them, she hugged them, she cuddled them, she kissed them. She was a much happier person from that. So that's what brings me here today. I'm here to request the council consider a change to the bylaw which prohibits the keeping of hens in our backyards in residential zones. Chickens have many natural skill sets that include being pesticiders, if that's a word, by eating ticks and fleas, herbiciders, by eating and clearing unwanted vegetation, and they generate organic fertilizer. With this, they make our water supply safer than those where toxic insecticides and pesticides are routinely applied, which I know that are being used for ticks in our backyards. The trend for backyard flocks is so strong that in the past few years, towns and cities across Canada and the U.S. have revised their laws to allow urban folks to keep their own chickens. With the emergence, there have been tremendous amounts of misconceptions and false beliefs surrounding the keeping of micro flocks of chickens. To name a few of the Canadian cities, they are Toronto, Ottawa, Brampton, Kitchener, Burlington, Cambridge, Guelph, Kingston, Waterloo, Brampton, Niagara Falls, Peterborough, Orangeville, and I believe Pelham is in the process of changing theirs as well, and there's a few more. The benefits to having chickens, of course, the most obvious is that there's fresh eggs from humanely raised hens. The second is that they're pets, companions, and therapy animals. Chickens are social and empathetic creatures, and as such, they can form special bonds with their human caretakers. These bonds can help individuals who are suffering from mental illness such as anxiety, depression, PTSD, and dementia. Therapy chickens have been found to lower levels of isolation and loneliness, both of which are major contributors to mental illness. Studies have shown that they reduce anxiety and depression. They encourage verbal communication, routine, and responsibility. They provide laughter and lessen loneliness. Chickens are routinely used as therapy animals and used in visits to the elderly and health and retirement facilities. There are several myths associated to chickens. The first one being that they are dirty and smelly. Chickens don't smell, it's the animal waste that smells, and all animal waste smells. When managed properly, no odors emanate from a yard with chickens. Having said this, I'm not sure how anyone in the West Lincoln area can complain about smell with the odor of chicken and animal manure that permeates the air on a constant basis from the surrounding farms. I have no problem with that, by the way. So the other myth is that chickens attract rodents and predators. Wild animals and rodents reside in every neighborhood and are attracted to food sources, such as those found in wild bird feeders and garbage cans. Rodents and other wild animals frequent backyards, regardless of whether chickens occupy those yards. Indeed, chickens are part of the solution because they are voracious carnivores and will seek and eat just about anything that moves, including ticks that carry Lyme disease, fleas, mosquitoes, and even mice and baby rats. I did not have chickens in Oakville, but I did have mice and rats. They were under my outdoor shed. They were under the wooden deck. They were in the wood piles. They were in my neighbor's garage. So they do exist everywhere. Another one is that chicks carry disease that can spread. Avian flu has been in the press as concern to commercial poultry production. The truth is that small flocks have literally no risk of avian flu transmission. The information from the CDC website is that water birds like ducks, geese, and swans carry the virus that spread to poultry through their mucus, saliva, and feces. It also states that most common songbirds found in our yards, like cardinals, robins, sparrows, blue jays, and such, do not get infected with the bird flu virus. The province of Manitoba's website states that in North America there are 2 major reservoirs or sources of avian flu. While ducks and geese naturally carry a wide range of avian influenza viruses, in strains to North America, the virus must cycle through thousands of domestic poultry before it has the opportunity to change into a highly pathogenic strain, and no cases are known where an avian flu has mutated into the deadly form in a small flock of chickens. The other one is that there are over 100 or more bird markets in New York, New Jersey, and other U.S. states, and I found that there's actually a few here in Ontario, which are a man-made reservoir of the disease. Because of the large number of turnover of birds at these markets, the virus has the opportunity to survive due to the thousands of birds that pass through the markets on a weekly basis. The virus has the potential to mutate to a deadly form under these conditions. On the Ontario Government Canada website, it states that the disease can spread to birds through contact with infected poultry and poultry products. It can spread through contaminated manure, litter, clothing, footwear, vehicles, equipment, feed, and water. So people who attend some of these markets, if they come into contact with any of these infected birds, they go back to their chicken farms, and then if they don't, do the right things, they can spread it to their own flocks. So based on these pieces of information on where and how it is spread, it is essential for commercial poultry producers to use strict biosecurity practices in order to prevent introduction of the virus to their flocks. Owners of micro flocks are more apt to keep their coops clean and take care in the disposal of any waste. They would be more likely to have good sanitation regimen after cleaning their coop by washing their hands and clothes. West Lincoln has homes which are zoned as farms, and anyone owning these properties can keep chickens regardless of their background. The idea that just by the fact that you own a piece of land that allows you to have them is safer than someone who owns a home in a residential zone is a bit prejudicial in thought. Any city person who has money and decides they want to buy a farm is no more competent to raise a chicken than one in a residential area. I don't have money to own a farm, but I came from a family of farmers who had domestic farm animals and orchards. In truth, the truth is, regardless of regulations, there are many backyards at present that have an untold number of chickens that fly under the municipal authority radar. Enforcement is an important consideration, but potential problems already fall under other municipal jurisdictions such as animal control, police, and health departments. There will always be the abuse of any standard, but a few bad apples should not be the expected norm, and that there are responsible owners who would be following all the recommended rules. In fact, a few issued summonses for infractions to those who abuse should fix that problem, and there is always the authority to withdraw a permit. I would like to say this: if the concerns are due to the avian flu spread to the chicken farmers in the area, a few things should be considered. The disease is spread by waterfowl. through their mucus, saliva, and feces. Would the risk not be greater from every large piece of property and field that surround these chicken farms? Driving by many of the chicken houses, you can see that some of them have backyard chickens themselves. They have large properties and farmlands adjacent, across, and nearby their flock houses. These properties and fields have ponds and areas where water has pooled and where many duck and geese can be seen present. Ducks and geese do not come and graze in our small backyards. They are found in those properties with ponds and fields where water has accumulated, on their own properties where the chickens are housed. In conclusions, as stated by many, small flocks are not the spreaders of disease. A flock of 2 to 4 chickens have practically zero risk to any of the chicken farms in the area. Changing the bylaw will not have hundreds of families coming forward to keep chickens. In fact, in Toronto, there were only 80 households that applied for permits. What it will do, however, is give the few of us that do want to live a very clean and quiet life and own pets, chickens as pets and companions, or support animals to have that same choice. That is my presentation for today.
Excellent, thank you, and thank you for putting up with all the interruptions there. I still don't know what happened in the end, we just kind of waved them off, so at the end, I don't know if it's just being recorded or live streamed, but I just want to give you, we didn't want to interrupt you again, but our clerk does take notes and keep track of everything.
Okay.
And yeah, so thank you for your presentation. I'll just look around the horseshoe to see if any members of council have any specific questions for you. Not seeing or hearing anything. Thank you so much for making the presentation. And, do you want to come up part of the presentation, or?
This is my neighbor.
I just wanted to say that I'm a neighbor of hers, but it would actually, people that would want to register and have birds, it would actually make some money for the township as well, right?
Well, so if you want to.
It would cost them,
If I could just get you, in order to participate, to have them captured in the minutes, I do need you to state your name and your address, and then whatever comment you make, then staff can have it on record, and whatever comes down the road, they can take that into consideration.
Okay, yes. My name is Karen Sabatine, and I live at
15.
I live at 15 Manorwood Drive. I'm Dora's neighbor, and I was just saying that if somebody else wanted to have chickens and apply for a permit, it would actually bring money to the township rather than the last meeting we just seen. They wanted our money.
Yeah.
We want to make the township some money.
I can say that I looked at a lot of the bylaws, all the cities that I mentioned, to see what the bylaws had on them, and all of them had where you had to apply for a permit and pay a fee. Some of them were a yearly fee, some of them are a one-time fee, and what a great way for, because as I said, there's homes that have chickens, regardless of whether there's a bylaw or not. The only thing they need is a neighbor that doesn't complain. So, you know, having that extra money coming in and having the city keep an eye and make sure that these rules are followed is probably better than not having them and people having them in their backyards anyways. So, yeah, like a lot of my my background or my research on this were from many dependable websites, from, like I said, the CDC, the Canadian Ontario.ca, some of the universities or colleges. I mean, I have a list of them, and really, I don't know what the opinions are of backyard chickens, but truly, they're not the risk. If the concern is to the nearby chicken farmers of the area, they're not the risk. There's other factors that are risks to them, not our 2 chickens that are going to be in our backyard. And I can only tell you, if I would even suggest that maybe if we would be able to have a process where that somebody can apply for an exemption. In the case of my mother, who suffers from dementia, it would be, you know, an emotional support animal for her. But I mean, you know, it is or it isn't. I don't know what to say. It's just
lots of
it
great
would be
ideas
great.
and lots of options, and certainly something staff can kind of like mull over the coming months and such, as far as when we come and bring these policies, as we review them and everything else. Certainly something we can consider.
I did another little point is I did a small post on social media just to see what people thought about it. And most people that said anything, they supported it, but they would say, no, it wouldn't be for me, I wouldn't do it, but yeah, you can, I don't mind them. So,
All right, I got Councillor Rayner and then Councillor Braddock. Sorry, I just happened to catch his hand first. You got a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chair.
Mr.
Sorry.
It's a long night.
It's getting to be. Anyways, the biggest concern, having worked in the poultry industry for many years, one of the largest hatcheries in Canada, is avian flu. And there has been cases documented in West Lincoln where people have lost their flock. I know somebody who lost his ducks and all his racing pigeons. The federal government just walked in and basically destroyed him right in front of his face, and he couldn't do a thing about it.
yeah.
And it took, I think it was 2 years before they reimbursed him, whatever, because government doesn't do anything fast in the feds. But anyways, that's one of the biggest factors. The other factor would be a lot of people don't know that chickens can lay eggs. They don't need a rooster. So a lot of problems is when, if you do this, somebody gets 3 or 4 chickens and then one of them is a rooster, and then everybody's annoyed in the neighborhood forever because they never shut up. So that's a concept. The other thing with the permits, Brian, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Treble, they could limit the quantity, could be part of the permit process, but the only part that I'm really concerned about is the potential spread of disease. And that right now is a very prevalent thing in our community. And I'm sure anything relating to something like that being around, I really don't think the government would be in support of that, but Mr. Treble, maybe you have a better idea.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the discussion that I've had with Dora and the research I've done to date would suggest there's 2 documents that we'd have to change at the local level. One would be our large animal bylaw that was just put in place back in the spring, and the other would be the zoning bylaw, since the zoning bylaw does not allow for livestock even as pets in the urban area in this instance. To do that would require a public meeting, and I have reached out to an individual very active in the chicken industry just for that very kind of discussion, because if you look at the economic statistics, and we all know this, but it's very evident when you look at the drawing, West Lincoln is the concentration of chickens in all of Ontario, by far above any other area in the province. So having that, I was concerned of the same thing. Not saying that Dora is not capable of looking after livestock, whether 1, 2, 6 or whatever, but just wanting to do it right and not jeopardize a multi-million-dollar industry in this township. So, a public process with fair input from everybody is the way it would have to be done, and then we could evaluate whether a zoning change is appropriate or not at that point.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may add that maybe this should be referred back to staff for further investigation and come back with a report down the road with regards to all these factors and concerns that we've mentioned.
If you're moving it, so.
I would move it if.
Is there a seconder? I got Councillor Trombetta as a seconder, and then before I call the vote, I had our CEO had her hand up there.
I did, thank you very much. Through you, Chair, to maybe Councillor Rayner. This is something that we could add to our list, but right now our workload is extremely high, and we're really worried about a number of our planning files. So it'll be the same crew that be doing that. So if this does go forward, please have the expectation that this could take us a year or more potentially to get to, unless we're directed to put that above everything else.
So you have to push everything else back, is what's being suggested. Oh, sorry, who has their hand up? You have your hand up? Sorry.
I think that there's, Councillor Rayner made some very good points, and because of the industry concern, I think that those discussions should be had, which might take 6 or 8 months. Plus, if we got OMAFRA involved, which could work as a conciliator between us and the farmers and the local residents who want 2 or 3 chickens. I think we need to have this really brought out and brought back to us with the fullness of discussion from all those places, because I had thought about the disease that could spread through the chicken barns, but I kind of was in the back of my mind, but that should probably be very paramount in the minds of the farmers out there.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor.
Mr. Chair to Madam CAO, so I'm just confused now. Are we supposed to tell residents that have a request that we can't get back to you for a year?
Well, thank you for the question, Councillor. We have a work plan, and this is, if council deems this to be something that they would like us to look at, we are going to be looking at, we were just directed to do other analysis of the, one moment, the new development for the Legion Villa and so forth. And you know as well that the new planning requirements, which is the same group of staff that are trying to meet all of those deadlines so that we don't have to pay back any fees associated with those developments. Our workload is really, really high, and I don't like to talk like this, but I have to be very realistic. But if that's what council would like us to do, we will do that. But there are risks associated with that and not getting other work done.
Well, I don't like to see Mrs. Pavlidis come here with saying come back in a year and a half. Like, that's tough on her end as well. So I think, well,
I think if I could, Councillor.
we need to come up with something as a council to not discourage the word going to the public, that if you have something, you're not going to get an answer for a year and a half.
But I think what's being said though is I think we're managing the expectations. I know in some situations we've been fortunate to get things back in a more timely manner. As you understand, our municipality, we don't have loads of staff as say a city would, so we're not going to be nearly as, maybe if the word is efficient. So I'm just saying, I understand what you're saying. You're more concerned about the way maybe that was communicated more than the reality. I think we're just trying to explain that it's going to take some time. This is not something that's going to change before the end of the year. Because as you heard from the other councillors, there's a lot of other agencies to consult with. This isn't something that we can just, hey, let's go do it and worry about fixing it along the way. We want to make sure it's done correctly from the get-go. In this particular situation, I understand your concern is beyond that, and it's just if someone else has another issue, how do we deal with that? I know it's kind of like a case by case. I'm just trying to explain to the presenter there that this is not anything specific.
And I just took out the floor. Sorry, Madam CEO. I just think the messaging is a little forthcoming to the resident for at least for this council to say, and I understand what you're saying, but at least to this council to say, from Mrs. Pavlidis, then to go back to other residents and say, well, don't go to that council. They can't give you an answer for another year and a half. Like, the messaging has to be, it's our job to provide help for residents. It's our job to give them the best quality service that we can do. So I understand what you're saying, but I just think that's just the wrong messaging that we have to give to the public. At least it gets out from this council. And I think we need to work at something to provide a better answers to the public for that. So,
get Councillor Bell. Sorry, didn't see your hand.
So, with that answer, year and a half, I'm concerned. Why does it take a year and a half? Where's the staff? What went wrong?
So
it never used to take a year and a half, but now it's taking a year or more.
So
like the wheels fell off of this thing.
So from what I heard, and maybe our CEO can clarify, I think it was more an estimation given everything that staff have. I don't necessarily say it's going to be an exact year and a half, but I can go back to our CEO if you'd like to clarify.
I think I do have to explain, and I can see your concern, and I can see your upset, and to you as well. This is not a slight on your issue or your request. I'm more speaking about our resources. And with the latest changes to a lot of provincial legislation, our requirements are just unreal, and we don't have the staff to do some of the things that we need to do. So, and we just went through a very large consultation process to look at our backyard animal exercise. This was never raised, and we would have potentially have raised that during that process. So again, this is not to you and to your issue. I'm more concerned, and I'm speaking to council very frankly, about resources. And where things went off the rail, I can't even start to talk about that in 2023 and the changes that are being put upon our municipal sector. And I'd be happy to talk about that more, and I think we are going to be talking about that a little bit more in a closed session next Monday night.
Yeah, I think something needs to come back to council because something's terribly wrong, and we need to get this sorted out. Because it's not a way to run a municipality.
If I may.
So I have Councillor Chichuk and then Councillor Rayner.
I think that this is, perhaps, we should wait until next Monday, as Mrs. Henry or as others have said, that we are having a session. But because I do think priorities change, and I don't think we heard that it would be no. I think it's a matter of reprioritizing what it is that's there. And I don't know what those things are, and I think we don't, in the fullness of time, we may have to use outside resources and take ourselves to understand that this is a municipality where you have to spend money with outside consultants to do some of the work that can't be handled by internal resources. And, you know, which is why the people from Legion Villa coming prematurely, I'll say, with their ask, without knowing that we have legislation that requires us to stay within it right now, we need to be very careful what kind of time we spend on their ask for development charges, because we can't do anything about it. So those kind of things have to be rolled into the work plan, and we determine when and where and who is going to do the work. But I'm sure there's lots of consulting groups out there that will give us help to write bylaws, etc. And I think that we need to put it in perspective and have the discussion next week.
Okay, and Councillor Rayner.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. There's only, my biggest concern is disease transmission. I am a Guelph grad. When I was there, I took every single poultry course because that was my interest. Poultry micro is unbelievable, the amount of bacteria, the different types of bacteria and what it can do. And now we have this severe outbreak of avian flu, and as Mr. Treble mentioned, West Lincoln is predominantly a poultry producing. We cannot jeopardize the livelihood of such a massive industry in this township. So that's the part that scares me the most. And if you want to relate to it in a way that maybe is easier to understand, when COVID first came out, they said there is one case in BC, then there's 3 cases in Toronto. Within 6 months, it was all over Canada. That's how fast diseases spread. So whether you say it's a few in town, but if one of those is an infected bird at the right place at the wrong time, it could do tremendous damage, just as the spread of COVID did. It's no different in poultry, and that's my biggest concern. So this has to be done very carefully and very thought out, because the potential to our industry is tremendous in this township, and we can't jeopardize that for a few birds in the backyard.
I totally understand that's somebody's livelihood. I totally understand that. That's why a lot of the research that I did do was around avian flu and its transmission. And every article that I read, or a website that I went to, they all said the same thing. The disease is not spread by those 2-3 backyard chickens. If, as I mentioned, if you drive around, there's a few places that I've seen that there's like literally 75 chickens that are free range in a farm. It's not a poultry farm where somebody's raising, that's their livelihood. These people are selling their eggs from their backyard. So I would imagine that the fear or the risk would be greater from something like that than two backyard chickens from our backyard, where we don't have that. It's being spread through manure, the saliva. It's the wild birds. They step in even somebody's dog. In Toronto, they had a fear where they were finding that it were in some mammals, because what was happening was in the parks where a lot of these geese were landing, and they're leaving their feces, the people would allow their dogs, and they would be walking through the park getting it under their feet, and that's where it actually spread. It wasn't from the backyard chickens. There's I don't know of anything that I've read that it actually came from somebody's backyard chicken. In fact, it was quite the opposite. And I don't know if some of these poultry farmers go to some of these wet markets where they have all of these birds. They may very well be if they're looking for different types of birds, that sort of thing. But your average person that lives in, Smithville on our residential street is not going to any of these markets. So the risk is as everybody says, pretty nil from our chickens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only other comment I have with regards to this is the fact that the areas that you've spoken of, as Mr. Treble said, there is no area in the province of Ontario that has more intensification of poultry than West Lincoln. So it's a lot easier for these other places that are not subjected to the intensive poultry operations that we have to be more lenient in what they do, because they don't have the potential of a massive potential problem that we do. So we have to be that extra careful, because our circumstances are different than just about any municipality in the province of Ontario. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Understand that.
Yeah, no, I think this is a comprehensive review that needs to be done. It's not something that we can just kind of do overnight. So again, I think, just if I can kind of reel things back, and I'll go back to our CEO in a second here, is just so you understand, is like, this is not just something that we're taking lightly. We want to look at it from all aspects. We want to make sure it's done correctly and it works. As Councillor Rayner mentioned, I think we're the poultry capital of Canada, if I'm not mistaken. And so I understand that there's also the liability component, the what if, not so much the resident who may be the responsible one who takes care of it, who does everything they're supposed to be. It's, as you said, it's always a few bad apples. But in our municipality, a few bad apples could be detrimental to a huge industry that supports the nation. And so this is not something we're going to take lightly, something we're going to make sure is done correctly. And again, I think our CEO was just trying to give you a realistic timeline of managing your expectation. If you reach back in a month or two, they're probably not even going to have been able to have looked with it, because they have to plan meetings and consultations, and it's something that's probably going to take a year or two. And I know that's probably not ideal, and hopefully it comes back sooner. This is not a guarantee. It's just trying to set your expectations reasonably. I'll go back to our CAO, who had her hand up there.
Yes, thank you. And so that council doesn't lose faith in me, I want to tell you about a couple other things that are coming up. We are going to be getting a presentation from the Niagara region very soon about our ag profile in the township, and we will have an opportunity to talk to those professionals that are coming to talk to us about agriculture. We have also talked about, through our strategic plan, about doing an agricultural roundtable with some of our neighboring municipalities, including Pelham, Waynflete, Niagara on the lake. And maybe this is one of the issues that we could talk about as well. So we're always looking for opportunities to learn about it and understand how it could impact both our residents and our businesses as well.
Okay, perfect. Councillor Trombetta?
Thank you for that, Madam CEO. Just the issue that I have at hand, and I know we already reiterated, is the timeframes that are issued to a resident. If it's stated that it's priority from council to do it tomorrow, it's for council to do tomorrow. And if council, and that all should be said, there should be no timeframes issued to a resident saying that it's going to take 2-3 years. It's priority of this council to decide what comes first and what comes next. Thank you, Madam.
Can I just say, the reason I came forward with this, initially it was the text, but the reason that I came forward in the first place was the difference that I saw in my mom. I don't know if you know what it's like to live with a 91-year-old woman who has dementia. Keeping her happy was incredibly like the best thing to keep her happy, then instead of having the anger issues, and I probably have PTSD from it myself at this point, but so that's why I came forward with it now, and who knows, is she going to be alive in a year and a half from now? I mean, yeah. I couldn't say, right? So that's why I'm here.
I know. So, sure.
I understand that it probably isn't an important issue for some people, but it is an important issue for her and her life. So as a resident, I don't appreciate people laughing while she's bringing up this subject.
Okay.
It's important to all council.
No, I'll clarify. I don't know if someone was smirking or making a gesture unrelated, so by all means, I don't know who that could have been, but apologies on behalf of the council for whoever was smiling. I don't, all matters are important to this council. I think it's also important that we, and I think this was the only intent of our CO, was to give you a clear picture of the expectation based on what the current workload with the resources that we have. Again, this is not a shot at this particular item. It's all items that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. We understand the important, and even in your situation, the urgency. I'm sure there's other people who could benefit from it who maybe don't have a 91-year-old mother and someone else. So we do understand that, and there's only so much resource that we can spread. So like as you heard from our CO, as we try to deal with some of these other partners and look at some of these things in terms of liability and risk management, like those things do need to be part of that conversation, because last thing we want to do is create a bigger problem trying to solve a matter or address a certain need for somebody else. We just have to make sure we do follow the process and do everything else. And I hope you don't take any offense. We're just trying to give you a realistic timeline of what that could look like. And if in some situations we've had some things come back a lot sooner, we've also had some things go a little bit longer. So again, we're just trying to do our best to be as transparent and upfront, so you kind of leave here tonight saying, okay, this is what I can kind of expect to hear back on and what that decision looks like, because that's the other side of it, right?
No problem. I just hope that when the decision is being made and the information comes forward, that it's not just one side is being taken because of the fears. And I understand the fears, but they also have to listen to what the experts have said and take that for what it's worth as well. So, I mean,
that will be part of the comprehensive review when they go and look at that. All those variables will come in. As you heard our director, there will be a public meeting, so there'll be another opportunity for, if we get to that point, there'll be another opportunity for that to kind of come out, not just from the public say, but also what we're hearing from the experts. And then at some point, whether regardless of what the recommendation is, all those extra findings, those experts, reports, everything else kind of comes into it. And it's a big process to review that, and it's only primarily because of the risk factor, but you'll definitely be part of that. So at this point, I'm gonna go and call the question. No, we're gonna call the question. Everyone's had more than one shot to speak. So I'm gonna go to our clerk to.
I'm just going to read out what I have here, just so you guys are comfortable. That the presentation made by Dora Pavlidis regarding a request to allow for backyard chickens in the residential zones be received, and that the correspondence as outlined above be referred to staff to present a recommendation report at a future planning, building, and environmental committee.
Perfect. So if you can put the vote forward. Dora, as well, make sure to email our clerk's office to put you on the list, so when a decision does come forward, you're instantly notified and you're not having to wait and search through the internet or anything like that.
Thank you.
Thank you, honestly. Appreciate the.
Thank you very much.
It did not come up? It was your motion, so can I just pass along what you said?
Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering if we can put something on like 6 months or something. Can we put a number, Council?
I've already called the vote, so unless you want to do a friendly after the fact, I don't think we need to worry about that at this point.
It's not coming up, but I swear to you.
He supports it.
I support it.
All right. So that carries 7-0. Thank you guys very much. Okay, I guess we're going to go into a quick 5-minute recess, and we'll be right back. All right, thank you for your patience again. Welcome back. We're going to move now forward to request items, to address items on the agenda. As I say that, we have no one in the gallery, and virtually there's no one there. So we're going to move forward to consent agenda items. And I have it as, let me just bring it up properly here. Oh, all right, so I have, I don't know why it's not showing me the whole thing and not just 1 and 2. So let me also, is it? Yeah, that's fine. So just give me 2 seconds. Because again, the motion I gotta read won't make any sense unless I read what is actually associated to which. Let's see if you can beat my, all right, perfect. So it is, okay, that is pretty much the same, but not quite. All right, so item P6123, the Planning, Building, Environmental Committee hereby approve the following consent agenda items. Items 1 and 2B and are hereby received for information. And 2, item 3B and is hereby received and the recommendation contained therein be approved. Currently, there are no exceptions to the numbers yet, and I'm going to read the following items. Item 1 is Information Report PD 44 2023, and it's the 2022 Building Department Annual Budget Report. Item 2 is Information Report PD 48 2023, Housekeeping Amendment Number 7. And item 3 is Recommendation Report PD 45 2023, Removal of 1995 Development Agreement from title of Part Lot 31, Concession 6, former Township of Gainsborough, now the Township of West Lincoln. So I need a mover and seconder. We got Councilor Rayner and I'll go with Councilor Bell. And unless there's any numbers to be pulled, I'm going to call the question. Actually, I'll have clerk bring the question up. Sorry, trying to get us. Excelente. Still not working?
No, it just came through.
Oh, perfect.
It should work, it should work.
Nothing's showing over here.
I see it.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with it.
Okay, so you just want to tell me that he supports?
It's still working.
And it could be you might need to refresh the system. So that carries 7. Well, yeah, okay.
Oh, you did it.
He did it.
Oh.
Our deputy clerk did it. All right, so that carries 7-0. We're going to move to staff reports. Staff report, so we have item, I guess it's 10.1. Let me make sure I've got the right one here. Yep, so there's no communications for those who are following the agenda at home. Staff report 10.1, and the recommendation is, actually I guess I should read the first part. So item P6223, Senior Planner and Manager of Planning and Director of Building and Planning, Brian Treble. Re-recommendation report, PD 42, 2023, application for zoning bylaw amendment for 8214 and 8248 Concession 3 Road, file number 16010623, and the recommendation is that recommendation report, PD 42, 2023, regarding an application for zoning bylaw amendment for 8214 and 8248 Concession 3 Road, file number 16010623, dated September 11th, 2023, be received. And that recommendation, or in that, the application for zoning bylaw amendment submitted by Henry and Lisa Van Ryn, owners of 8248 Concession 3 Road, and Doug and Rita Lampman, owners of 8214 Concession 3 Road, be approved in accordance with the attached amending zoning bylaw with the site-specific regulations. And that no further public meeting is required for the consideration of this bylaw in accordance with Section 3417 of the Planning Act. If you remember, this was our public meeting about 2.5 hours ago. I got Councilor Rayner as a mover, and I got Mayor Ganan as a seconder. Any questions? Okay, Councilor Rayner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I remember when you did the public meeting, you said, for those who are interested in the file number, and that's why I keyed on it, you said 1601-006-23.
In the public meeting?
In the public meeting.
All right, so I must have misspoke.
Which is correct, if that's correct. But under 10.1, it's got file number 1601-06-23. There's a 0 missing.
Yes, you're correct. I actually just brought up the public meeting. It does say 006, so I'll go to the clerk for clarification.
Thank you.
Not 00, single O.
Okay, so
so the first one was
so
here.
the first one was incorrect. So the document I'm holding here should have said 06. And yeah, so thank you for catching that. Any other questions or comments?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, your microphone's still on. Not seeing or hearing any. You're good? Okay, I'll go to the clerk, the deputy clerk for the vote. Oh, no, it worked. It worked. And that carries unanimously So we're gonna keep motoring here. Oops. So the next item, which is, I guess, PD 6323, and that's a bylaw enforcement officer Jesse Paul and Director of Building and Planning Brian Treble, and it's a recommendation report PD 46 2023, amendment to accessible parking bylaw. So I'm going to need a mover and a seconder in a second, but I'll read the resolution first. That the recommendation report PD 46 2023 regarding amendment to accessible parking bylaw dated September 11th 2023 be received, and that accessible parking bylaw 97 2020 as amended be further amended by deleting and replacing the definition of an accessible parking space as listed in the draft amending bylaw as found at attachment 1 to this report. So if I can get a mover, I got Councilor Broderick and Mayor Ganan as my seconder. Any questions or comments? I got Councilor Bell.
Just, what is the amendment, further to the amendment? Kind of lost, like we amended it once, and then we amended the amendment. Maybe Mr. Treble could just
All right, so I'll go to our director just to speak
kind of
to
fill
the
me
item.
in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a few months ago, in fact, maybe it was just last month, the Accessibility Committee of the township had identified that our parking space standards in the bylaw for accessible parking were wrong. They were not current in accordance with the current regulations of the province. So we made that amendment, as I say, just very recently. And now we're changing another provision related to the markings for accessible parking. Provincial law requires signage on posts at a certain height and a certain size. But our definition actually spoke to the need for blue painting on the surface at the parking spot as well. And so we're amending the bylaw to simply align with provincial rules. I know there might be some discussion around whether or not the blue signage should be there anyway, and I'll take direction on that. But I don't think our bylaw should be out of alignment with provincial law. If we do anything, it would be over and above the law at that point. We had an appeal that went before the minister, before the hearings officer, and it was thrown out because of the discrepancy between our language and the provincial rules.
Is that everything, Councillor?
So, are we going to be painting on the asphalt, or no?
The bylaw, or sorry, the report is written to revise the bylaw through you, Mr. Chair, does not require the painting. That would be a separate direction that you could give through discussion if that's what you want. And going forward, probably, Mr. Chair, should be part of a sort of a budget deliberation, I would assume at that point.
Yeah, I'd like to get it in somewhere where we can discuss it, because it is a topic in the community.
Okay.
It's the appropriate time, I'd like to get it on the agenda.
Okay. So, I'll go to our deputy clerk. So would that be, can we add this in some capacity, or do you want to do a separate resolution for that?
So this type of thing would not require a separate recommendation. You can give verbal direction to the director, who can then take that into account for the following budget deliberations. It doesn't require a separate resolution.
Okay. So I guess at this point, if I can just look around the room and let other people talk, but if there's general consensus, in case you're unsure, I think the request that's being asked is, so in our accessible/handicap parking spaces, I'm not too sure if there's a specific term used beyond that. The request is to have it actually painted to be a clear indicator of what the spot's for, because from my understanding, as well as that there were some people who were parking there who were unaware that they were in the parking spot they were, and had there been painted. That you see in, other places like malls and other municipalities, we don't have that. So maybe if I can, unless anyone speaks against it, I'll ask the director to keep that in mind moving forward. And, yeah, we'll go from there if that's okay.
Yeah,
Councilor?
yeah, that's good, thank you.
Perfect. Any other members of council having questions or anything like that? All right, go to our deputy clerk for the question. That carries. That carries. So we're gonna keep motoring forward here. our next item, item P6423, Director of Building and Planning Brian Treble, recommendation report 47, or PD 47, 2023, 167 St. Catherine Street draft plan of condominium extension approval, 1 year, file number 2100-08617. I'll read the resolution, then get my movers afterwards. That report, PD 47, 2023, regarding recommendation report 167 St. Catherine Street, draft plan of condominium extension approval, file number 2100-08617, dated September 11th, 2023, be received. And that the draft plan approval for 167 St. Catherine Street be extended for a period of 1 year to expire on May 25th, 2024, subject to the conditions found at attachment 2 to this report, and that a notice of extension be circulated to relevant agencies and departments. If I can get a mover for that and some seconders, I got Councilor Braderick and Councilor Chichuk. Any questions or comments? I'll go to our director.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, not to belabor the meeting, but this is the guy that dropped off the meeting. He was in attendance, he was the applicant.
Oh, okay.
And he sent me an email saying that he had signed in at 6:30, but unfortunately he had to log off. He apologized that he couldn't stay on until his file came before council. So he was here to answer questions, I know of.
Oh, okay.
But it was taking too long, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, and we had a bunch of technical issues tonight, so please extend our apologies
Okay.
To that. And just so anyone understands, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but if you notice, it says 1 year extension, but it's from when the original approval had expired, which was back in May. So that's why it's not a clerical error. May 25th, 2024 would be when this would expire again. And yeah, so I got Councilor Bell, you have your mic on. I don't know if you're going to talk.
Sorry.
Nope, okay. Any members of committee? Not seeing, hearing, Mr. Chair, or Mr. Treble?
Just to point out something, this is an example of a file that staff had ready for signing back in November. But the province thinks we're the ones holding up the process. So just an observation that it's not always us.
Yeah, and I guess my question to you is, so we have an elapsed, something that's elapsed over a period of time here. We obviously granted some kind of temporary exemption so we could get it back to committee. And so I was just kind of curious, is this something that you think that we're realistically going to be in the same scenario come next year? Like this area in particular has kind of been in limbo for a very long time. So I guess my question to you is just trying to verify the likelihood this is going to actually help, or are they just, we're just wasting our time?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the answer to that, Mr. Chair, except to say that he keeps telling me he is interested in doing the development, but there is a project that he has in London that is first and foremost. So whether it's timing because of another project, whether it's the economy, or not familiar with our market, I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but he is very accessible. I can talk to him by picking up the phone anytime, so
Okay.
he seems to have an interest at least.
And is there a security that was given already?
He has not provided security yet, because
So
he has
that's-
not signed the
So
agreement.
he's not only not provide security from the last extension that we gave, is that what I'm understanding?
Once the agreement was signed, he would have to have provided security, but he's refusing to sign the agreement, I think because he just doesn't want to put the money down any sooner than he has to.
So my request is going to be, so we're not stuck in the same conundrum for the remainder of the year, when this would expire, is there any way we could ensure that a security is actually met, so we know it's not just something that's wasting our time, your time, even their time? Is there a specific way of wording that we can include it?
I think, again, just some flavor in the minutes is probably adequate, that I can convey sort of a sentiment of committee back to the applicant.
I just feel if you can't give some kind of security before the end of the year, then I think, maybe this gets revoked. But that's just my opinion. I got Councilor Bell and Councilor Chichuk who have their hands up, so I'll go to Councilor Bell first.
So with this conversation, I'd like to just extend this till the end of the year and a commitment from him that he is going to go forward. Because without a commitment from him, I'm not prepared to go past the end of the year.
That's calendar year you're speaking.
Calendar year, the end of this year, December 31st. if we don't have a solid commitment off of him. I mean, as was just stated by the building department, he hasn't even signed for it, so is he just fishing, hoping that prices go up and
Drawing
he
it
can
out.
dump the land? I don't know, but I think that right now, I'll give him till the end of the year, and then I want a commitment from him,
Okay,
the same as he wants from us.
okay. I got Counselor Chichak.
You know, some of us were at AMO, others of us have probably become aware of the fact that the Premier was on stage talking about a $1 billion pot of money that was going to go to assist municipalities, small and large, to augment the costs of putting in additional infrastructure and the costs of operating in this new world that's just been founded. Well, here's an example, and I say this not to belabor this one gentleman, but there are small developers out there that can only have one project at a time. There are developers that have appealed to the OLT and are taking very well-defined and disputed and discussed official plans to the OLT because they're not satisfied with where they place in a development process that holds up 1,300 or 1,400 units. So then there are people who are just unable to get the funding to get their projects forward. West Lincoln has all of these problems, as do many other municipalities, small and large. So when Mr. Ford offers $1 billion to those municipalities and cites municipalities who had applications that were approved and well down the pike, those municipalities will share in that $1 billion. But places like West Lincoln and these kinds of application will not have a chance because much of the land in the approved land and in our downtown core is held by developers that are not wanting to put certain pieces ahead of their other pieces. So, you know, I say this tongue-in-cheek to some extent, and I got my dander up tonight, but, you know, we are at the disposal of developers, small and large, to put together a plan to work with us. We don't have staff to rush to their needs. We may need to hire more, but we have nothing sitting on desks now for the stuff that should be, and we have land that is ready to go. So, and as our CAO has said, and then we'll have a big surge. And what do we do then? So we will not get part of that $1 million pot because we will not make 80% of what it is our destined cap number is, because these kind of things still sitting there. I know that going to the end of the year is not going to do any good for this guy because if you aren't in the ground now and you don't have your basements, your foundations in, he won't be able to do it. But there has to be an understanding both at the province and here that we cannot wait for everybody to play other pieces of land against us. And that's my comment. So when people look at the price, the affordability of houses, West Lincoln ain't going to get any of the bonusing that's out there from the province that our people's tax money is making available to them.
Well said. Oh, Counselor Trombetta.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Trouble, if Counselor Bell wants the extension, it's really only 2 months away. What happens if you take into Christmas into consideration, at the end of the year, he's got 2 months to comply? As Counselor Chichuk kind of stated that, you know, there is a push and a need, he's still going to win, he's still going to get the extension,
Through you, Mr. Chair, the concern I have kind of ties into something that Councillor Chichok said as well. He has not, in my mind, provided any information to suggest whether he's satisfied conditions of draft plan approval. So if we put a 2-month timeline in place, he'll never meet it, guaranteed.
So what do we?
And then we're back to a clean slate.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So what do we really do?
I think you better extend it because that would show some support towards the need for housing. But put pressure on to see if we can't get him there.
So
all he needs to do is sign an agreement and give us security, and then I think we're maybe close to what Terry is asking for.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Trouble, what recommendation do you think what recommendation do you think we should go with?
Well, probably the one that's presented.
Presented?
Yeah.
So the only thing I'll mention to that is, so by him not giving the security and signing, is him doing the same thing, so I almost disagree. I feel like the minute he signs, it doesn't matter if he doesn't have everything else in order, he's gonna have the time to deal with it. He's not even signing and giving security, he's not even showing his sign of good faith that he's gonna follow through on this in any capacity, to the point that he doesn't wanna
Yeah.
make a commitment, so he
See-
wants us to commit to him, but he doesn't wanna commit to us.
There's sort of a two-step process that happens here. Signing the site plan agreement, which is here, I've had it for a long time. Signing the site plan agreement at least allows him to get building permits to start building rental townhouse units. The plan a condo and the conditions of draft plan a condo, which is this application, allows him to then sell those units as condo units. So he hasn't done either piece. I don't have site plan signed or draft condition clearance
So
from
why
anything.
why can't we ask for the site plan to be taken care of and the securities to be provided before, or we can have this pass as is with those conditions that those need to be met by a certain date? Doesn't necessarily have to complete both, but if we can kind of force their hand a little bit, because if he's not gonna, and I don't know what this situation, the financial realities of this individual is, so in no way am I trying to indicate or suggest anything. I'm just trying to look out for the best interests of our residents and our municipality, is if you want a commitment from us, you want us to keep extending this, and this is costing our taxpayers time and everything else and resource, they need to show some sign of good faith and sign that first step there. Even if that only opens the door up and he doesn't plan on selling anything right away, at least he's already committed.
Just a thought, sorry, and I haven't had time to obviously consult with Madam CAO, but if the report, I don't even know what the right term is, but if the report was referred back to staff for me to bring it back to council and speak to him in those 2 weeks to say basically you'll get an extension if you sign, kind of deal,
That's fine with
would
me.
that work? Could I do that, bring it straight to council?
Is that okay?
Okay.
Yes.
I see general consensus here. I'll go to Councillor Bellia's hand up.
And that was the whole point of my conversation coming up.
Yep.
We need to put something on this gentleman's plate to make him talk to us. And he's either gonna poo-poo or
Okay.
get off the pot,
And we,
so to speak.
and we have a lot of great developers in the community that have no problem with this. I realize some situations or circumstances present themselves, but I don't think that's an unfair ask, considering we're still jumping leaps and bounds to help this individual out till May, or however long it takes him to kind of clear draft plan. But I think at this point, he could at least show a little sign of good
Yeah,
faith there.
through you, Mr. Chair, the reason I said bring it back to council is because the extension that staff granted was to the end of September, so
So we have time.
try to deal with it at council. We at least haven't let it lapse at that point.
Perfect. All right, so we're gonna refer.
Mr. Chair.
I don't know what the right
I
term
would
is.
be happy to move a referral back to staff and bring it to council with conditions being met that show good faith and an intention, a full intention, including a commitment of financial payment to the town that gets us moving this property forward.
Okay, I got Councillor Chichek as a mover, Councillor Bell as the seconder. I fully support that. So, but that was for the original motion, this is for the new, this is for the, do you not need a new motion? I just said the councillor brought a motion forward, so I just kind of backpacked off that. Do we have to like let this one get defeated to bring the other one back, or how do you want to do that? Your mic's not on, I don't know if that matters, but.
This motion will refer that motion.
Okay.
This motion will refer that motion, so what would you like this motion to say, like exactly?
What the councillor just said, there's.
Yeah,
So-
watch the movie. That this be referred back to staff, this entire item, and that it be brought forward to the next council meeting with a negotiated agreement with the developer to show a commitment on his part to signing the agreements and financially supporting them to the satisfaction of the director and this council.
That's right.
We'll have you read it back just for the sake of.
While the typing is happening, I was noticing that the draft site plan agreement must have been done before the election because it still has the former mayor's name. The security is $1 million. and then admin fees on top. So it's a big number, which is probably part of the problem.
Okay, so that this item be referred back to staff to be brought forward to the next council meeting after consulting with the applicant, which would show a commitment from the applicant to completing the development
Financially
financially.
and signing the agreement.
It's got to meet the satisfaction of the director and the municipality.
Would you be okay with just having with a financial commitment and signing? That this item be referred back to staff to be brought forward to the next council meeting after consulting with the applicant, which would have a financial commitment satisfactory to the director. It is moved by Councillor Chichok and seconded by Terry Bell.
All right. So that votes. Mike, I'll wait for you. All right. And that carries unanimously. So thank you very much for that. Going to move to other business. Any other business? Not seeing or hearing anything. I don't see any new items of business. We do have confidential. Yes.
Just, Mr. Chair, one quick thing, just to remind people that the Silverdale Corn and Chili Roast is this Friday. We won't go into all of the accolades about the fair, because this is a long meeting, but this is the opportunity to remind people about chili and corn at Silverdale.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So I'm going to move to the confidential item. Okay. So, confidential matters, recommendation that the next portion of this meeting be closed to the public to consider the following pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001. And so first item is a legal solicitor client privilege, Ontario Land Tribunal, Helen Kazan, file number 22-00280. It's a verbal update. The next one's, the applicable closed session exemptions are advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege, including communication necessary for that purpose, and that litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. The next item is a legal solicitor client privilege, Ontario Land Tribunal Official Plan Amendment, OPA 63. It's a verbal update as well. The applicable closed session exemptions are advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, and litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. And then our third one is a property matter, bylaw enforcement matter, South Grimsby Road property matter, verbal update. Applicable closed session exemptions are litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunal affecting the municipality or local board, and personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. And then, I believe, the next one is bylaw enforcement officer Jesse Paul and director of planning and building Brian Treble. Legal enforcement matters, quarterly bylaw update, verbal update, and its applicable closed session exemptions are litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees. And so I just need a mover and seconder to go into close. It's moved by Councilor Rayner, second by Mary Gannon. Are we going to do a vote here? Okay, that should pop up. This is just to go into close there. Okay, that carries. We're officially closed. We'll be back shortly. PM. If I can get a mover and seconder. I got Councillor Bradrick and Councillor Bell. And then we'll call the vote here. No, it hasn't come up yet. He's just getting it loaded. If it's just as easy, we can call it. Yeah, I know. We'll just do it by hand here. So all those in favor, that carries. So we're open. So rising, and I just got to read basically what I read already. So it's item, I guess, P6623. Director of Building and Planning, Brian Treble. It was legal solicitor client privilege, Ontario Land Tribunal, LLT, Helikazan, file number 22-00280, verbal update. Item P6723, Director of Planning and Building, Brian Treble, legal solicitor client privilege, Ontario Land Tribunal as well, official plan amendment OPA 63, verbal update. Item P6823, Director of Planning and Building, Brian Treble, property matter, bylaw enforcement matter, South Grimsby Road property matter, verbal update. And lastly, item P6923, bylaw enforcement matter, Jesse Paul, and Director of Planning and Building, Brian Treble. That was a legal enforcement matter, quarterly bylaw update, which was a verbal update. And so at this point, I'm going to adjourn tonight's meeting at 9:58 PM.